10 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll be able to just go and modify your genes and correct these things that give you a higher probability of coming down with a life-threatening disease.
One of the things you've focused on, just from your own experience and applied it a wide way, is the importance of diet and how it affects, the old phrase, you are what you eat. There happens to be some truth to that. What kind of research, especially in changing the genes? You once said that perhaps in a decade, you're not going to be able to blame your parents for what you are, because you're going to be able to influence in a way we can't imagine what we are. Walk us through that. That's rather intriguing. We all know we should eat more veggies, but it has greater ramifications than just having a healthier diet.
Today, you don't change your genes, you change how your genes are expressed. So by changing your microbiome, what you eat, your lifestyle, you can change how your genes are expressed. There are therapies now for people for some cancers and other diseases, Crohn's, where you can take the genome, the microbiome from one human being who has responded well to treatment, and give it to another person who is not. And that might be the best treatment form. And you can start to change your microbiome within 7 to 10 days. So when you look at the world today, you can now see that we can measure what happens. And the incidence of prostate cancer and diabetes in China used to be 10%, 5% of the United States. Today, now it's climbing to the level of the United States as they've changed their diet, more to a Western diet, and we've opened thousands of McDonald's and thousands of Kentucky Fried Chicken and others. And you see the same thing occurring in Nigeria. So when you see them move from the diet they were used to eating, a plant-based diet, to more of a Western diet, but particularly a US diet, you see these dramatic changes in hormone-driven cancers. You see in diabetes today. Today, China, and if you went to medical school in China 30 years ago, you would have never studied diabetes. Today, they have more people with diabetes than any country in the world, and the least percentage treated for diabetes. And so what we know here, and we did a lot of work in cancer, particularly maybe more studies in prostate cancer than any, but by adding broccoli and other type of things, you can change how your genes are expressed. You can potentially slow down the growth of cancer. You potentially can prevent cancer because you're really changing how your genes are expressed. Now, we had a Nobel Prize issue just a week or two ago here in 2020, Steve, to Jennifer Doudna from my undergrad alma mater, Berkeley. And what she has done and others in CRISPR technology, she has laid the groundwork here that now we can change your genes. So if we think of it as spell check on a computer, as we're looking at all these genes you have and you have a mutation, you can go in there and change that one that has the mutation back to one you want, or take out the one that's giving you cystic fibrosis or some other disease, or making you highly susceptible to triple negative breast cancer or some other disease. And so 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll be able to just go and modify your genes and correct these things that give you a higher probability of coming down with a life-threatening disease from that standpoint. But in the interim, as you've pointed out, we now have data. Now, we never could access this data because the first sequencing of the human genome wasn't completed to 2003. It was 10 to 13 years, cost more than $3 billion. Today, Illumina, with all their devices, less than an hour and a couple $100. So I can now sequence your microbiome. I can tell you what's in your microbiome. It's the same thing that people do when they look at the waste product, let's say, from a fox or a bear or an animal. They know what they eat, whether they have disease, what are the other issues, what's going on. And so the ability to change this is changing the world. And this concept of healthy human, healthy planet, half of all the things that have affected climate change and other issues relate to food, clearing land to grow animals.
You've pointed out the physique of America certainly has changed. We now have 300-pound football players as the norm, over 400 you pointed out. That was not true 20, 30 years ago as a rarity, especially in high schools. You've pointed out that the physique has changed and that these lifestyle changes count for $1 trillion of our, or 70% of our healthcare costs are related to this.
So it's hard to compare when they say what's the healthcare cost in France versus the US, because as you've pointed out, the physique of men and women in the United States is substantially different than France. Portion sizes in the United States are substantially larger than France. And so you're really talking about different issues. And we all know as you gain weight or as you change your diet, you can increase your probability of getting diabetes, stroke, heart attacks, cancer, etc. But there's a movement in the United States, I believe, Steve, in this area today. Hundreds of food tech companies today that are, changing the world. Not just hamburgers such as Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger, but fish, salmon, and tuna is coming to your table soon. That's made out of plants and vegetables, etc. And so 50% of almost all the food in the United States is wasted and goes up and turns into methane someday. So there are enormous opportunities in this technology, but the revolution that allowed us to do this, to study and discover there's a form of broccoli that might prevent you from getting prostate cancer or other diseases.
If you can make it tasty, I would try it.
Has been the sequencing and the technology dramatic changes that have occurred.